Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rhit Moore, past master and current secretary of Fort Worth 148.
This is Billy Hamilton, current junior warden for Fort Worth 148.
This is Gabriel Jagush, senior deacon of Fort Worth 148, and we have a special guest today.
This is David McHam, Worshipful Master of Waco 92 in Waco.
Oh, Waco.
Oh,
David,
Waco.
It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so my first question off the bat is, how long have you lived in Waco?
10 years.
I'm always intrigued at people that lived in Waco because it's like, what do you do there?
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah,
oh man.
It's a good point. No, it's a good point. And it's a fair point. It's Middle Earth. So we are
Rhit, I
that-
feel
that-
like this is a Mean Girls moment here. You can't just ask people why they live in Waco.
So I don't necessarily mean that in a derogatory term.
No,
because I
no.
love small towns, but it's like a lot of folks live there, and it's like when I go there, it's, there's fast food and of course the university. But aside from that, I'm like, what else is here?
Hey, don't forget the Dr. Pepper Museum.
Yes, how dare you, Rhit? How dare you forget the Dr. Pepper Museum? Also the prison museum. That's important.
It reminds me of Cleveland, the town just south of me. You go there and it's kind of a time warp. Old buildings, old businesses. It's like, what do you do if you live here?
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
No, I don't bash Waco. I love that place.
I'm down there too often to bash it ever.
Exactly. Too much going on down there.
Yeah, we don't want to be run out of town while we're trying to attend, like all the different events that happen there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I moved here 10 years ago, it was completely different than it is now. There's a whole lot more going on now than there was. So
That's
I can
true.
say that Waco has grown up a little bit in the 10 years that I've lived here. So it's getting, due to the TV show that they have, the Chip and Joanna and the Fixer Upper show, it's getting quite a bit busier these days.
No, absolutely. It's definitely starting to feel the effects, like Austin moving north and DFW moving south, and they're right in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I tell everybody. It's like, we used to just be this great place to fuel up between Dallas and Austin. And now, like, people are stopping and actually, like, looking around the city. And before, we really didn't have much to offer them. But I think now people are capitalizing and trying to build off of the success of that TV show. And now there's quite a few things to do in town. It's getting a little bit more exciting. Well, good. We want every brother who visits town to have a good time. So if anybody ever is coming into town, you should let one of the 92 guys know, and we will make sure that your visit is as pleasant as possible.
Yeah, y'all are great hosts. Rhit, do we want to jump into discussion questions?
Let's do it.
All right. So, brethren, for context, we release the podcast on the first and third Thursdays of the month. So this discussion, by the time this episode will be released, has happened about 2 weeks prior to it. But today, on this day, there was a big thread in the Texas Freemasons group where somebody was very upset that people were breaking Grand Lodge law. And they were doing it so flagrantly in the Facebook group. And specifically, he was accusing people of breaking Title IV, Chapter 1, Article 405A, which says, and he said that, you can't post pictures of fellow crafts and entered apprentices. Can you post pictures of fellow crafts and entered apprentices, Rhit?
So, I mean, it really and truly, that's a double-sided question, because per letter of the law, it says names.
And it's
But
just names, right? Not identity or picture or anything?
Yeah, exactly. But here's the caveat, is that the people that ultimately will enforce those laws interpret it another way. So you don't want to take this as hey, let's start posting a bunch of pictures of EAs and fellow crafts. Be cautious if you do. My best advice is everybody take their apron off, or have the EA in the back where you can't see his apron and he's unidentified. If you're just hell bent on posting pictures after a degree, which I don't think is a bad thing, make that EA unidentifiable. Certainly don't put their name. Hey, we did a great EA degree tonight. Having the back, nobody knows who he is.
Congratulations, John Smith, our newest entered apprentices.
There you go.
Who happens to live at? Yeah.
Exactly. This is one of those issues, though, that I like discussing because of the nuances of it in our laws, and that words mean things. It doesn't mean I'm going to go out and post pictures of EAs. I've kind of backed off of that. If I did, I would be much more cautious to make sure they're not identifiable. But there's not really a big dog in this fight. It's not one that you want to make a big stand on. If it's something you want to change, put a resolution in. Otherwise, you probably are skating on thin ice if you do start posting pictures. I don't know if they could do anything to you in the end, but you might get called on the carpet for it. So that would be up to the individual. I mean, in the end, you get called on the carpet, you're either going to say, yes, Grandmaster, I won't do that anymore, or you're going to have to defend your position.
Right. Now, for anyone that is wondering, the exact verbiage of Title IV, Chapter 1, Article 405A is publication of names prohibited. The names of petitioners, candidates, entered apprentice masons, and fellow craft masons shall not be published in a lodge newsletter or any news media, public or private. And so I would argue that, or no, I would not argue. I would point out to brethren, I would say that names are off limits. But also, what does constitute news media, public or private?
So here's the thing.
Be careful, but you have some flexibility, I think.
There's kind of a precedent set with this, because at Grand Lodge last year or the year before, I get them mixed up, there was a resolution brought before if a lodge can create a database of EAs and fellow crafts to keep track of them. And it was voted down that no, they cannot do that. That's a form of publicizing their names.
And the way that I would argue is that is not a form of news media. As it stands, that is an informational tool used by the lodge that does not constitute news media.
Yeah, that's a real tricky one.
So the way that I look at it is, if you follow the letter of the law, maybe not necessarily the spirit of the law, but if you follow the letter of the law, you can absolutely publish photos. Just be prepared to actually know Article 405A very well. And when somebody tries to call you on it, say, show me where it says photographs or pictures or likeness or identity. Because some people have argued that the picture is identity, but it just says names. Your name is not your identity.
Right. And if you do, be reasonable with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that if everybody on the front row that you can see their aprons, the flaps are down, who knows who the EA is? His identity is not being given.
Right.
You'd have to be a member of that lodge to know that, or there at the degree. So just err way on the side of caution on that one.
Yep.
Because there are other ways to do it, Take a picture of the altar with the Bible closed, square and compass on the side. here to do an EA degree.
Yeah. And so you can all, a still life is a lot less controversial.
There you go. I mean, this is one of those things that's fun to discuss, not actually go out and try to thumb your nose and say, oh, it's legal, I'm going to post about, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
and if you want to, you can get fancy. Take a picture. If you have movable lights, take a picture of the altar with the movable lights in place, which is legal. You can do that. The Grand Lodge actually even has diagrams of how to do it. And take a picture and on top of the picture, quote the appropriate passage from the volume of Sacred Law.
The key is lodge cannot be open yet, though. Once you start opening a lodge, there's no pictures.
Yeah. And brethren, if you want to take a picture with the Bible open, do it before lodge is open. Have the Bible open, but have what's called a broken square and compasses, which is where the square and compasses just aren't touching. So you can do that, and it's not like that automatically magically opens lodge to touch them together, but it's a pretty clear indicator to people that no, lodge is not actually open. That's just a CYA sort of thing.
Yep. And that's what we should do as Masons. I mean, we're not here to, thumb our nose at, hey, there's a loophole, I'm going to take advantage of it. It's just things we should discuss and correct.
Mm-hmm. Well, and on a personal note too, when you mentioned having the movable lights, I would love to see more lodges actually utilize those different diagrams.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Grand Lodge is very helpful with actually spelling out exactly how it's supposed to be. They have a floor map and a diagram and everything. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, in a related vein, can entered apprentices and fellowcrafts wear Masonic insignia?
Mm-hmm. So I'm still out on the jury on this one.
So
I'm scouring Grandmaster's decisions. I just for some reason think I read that somewhere,
mm-hmm.
and I haven't looked at it long enough to really be confident to say it's not in there. But there is no Grand Lodge law specifically stating that.
Yeah.
So that I'm aware of.
One of the questions that I got asked was, in what jurisdiction, I haven't heard of any jurisdictions that allow for that. In what jurisdictions do you know of? And the very legalistic answer is that any jurisdiction that does not expressly forbid it allows it. Because unless you're in Pennsylvania,
right,
if it is not prohibited, it is permitted. Pennsylvania's constitution starts off with, if it is not permitted, it is prohibited. So they're the exception to the rule. So technically, unless Rhit finds a Grand Master's decision that says entered apprentices and fellowcrafts can't wear Masonic emblems, in Texas you can technically do that. At which point it becomes up to your lodge to decide that.
Well, and I think the important point about this too, right, is to make sure that it's the appropriate square and compass for that degree that brother has achieved.
Exactly.
I think the big thing is you don't want EAs and fellowcrafts wearing the Master Mason's square and compass simply because they haven't yet achieved that, that third degree. They haven't been raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason yet, but they're hard to find.
They are.
It is possible to find rings and other emblems with it, because myself, I was passed and raised in a different jurisdiction. Actually, I was entered in I was initiated in a different jurisdiction. So when I was in Arizona and I was passed to Fellowcraft, after the degree, the Worshipful Master actually presented me with a Fellowcraft Mason's ring that had the square and compass in the appropriate configuration, and told me, that I was more than welcome to wear it, and show my pride in the fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
But that's a different jurisdiction than Texas. But I haven't seen anything in writing yet that prohibits the same thing from being done here in Texas.
Right. And so I would actually, if an entered apprentice came up to me and he was wearing, whether it was a ring or if he had a necklace or something like that, and it was in the entered apprentice configuration of the square and compasses, I would say, hey man, that's really cool. Are you prepared to justify that when somebody tries to grill you on it? Because as it is, unfortunately, with so many things, jurisprudence in Masonry, it's not so much what the law actually is as is what people think the law is. So you got to know it and cite it. Yeah.
Right.
But generally speaking, y'all, when if you want to find an entered apprentice ring or fellowcraft mason's ring, you're most likely going to have to look for sources outside of the United States, because in the U.S. we initiate, pass, and raise guys very fast. Compared to other jurisdictions, they take a long time. One of the examples I cite where you're going to see entered apprentice and fellowcraft mason jewelry is Peru, because in Peru it takes about 5 years to become a master mason. So there are jurisdictions where it takes 7 years to become a master mason. So that's when you'll see a little bit of that, a little bit more of that. Hey, I have this jewelry, but it's in a different configuration, kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I did actually, by the way, just a quick search on Amazon. I found 2 EA configured square and compass rings on there. The question there, though, is as quickly as we tend to go through those degrees here in the United States, does it make sense to make that kind of investment, though?
I can see it maybe with some of the traditional observance lodges that make a point of taking about a year or so between degrees. I know that there are some TO lodges that say, hey, no, we don't care if you know your proficiency backwards and forwards. We want you to steep in the ritual, steep in the education, really just take your time for each degree. That's maybe where I would see that, where it kind of has a point.
Right.
In the U.S. Of course, the real answer is we just need to go slower.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and personally, I would have loved that if I would have had a lodge that, it took a year to get each degree, but there was a lot of education and, a lot of activities that went into each one of those degrees.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of like we're veering off the beaten path here, but I'd love to see a system where you actually have separate lodges that meet on separate degrees. Like, you have to be a member of an entered apprentice lodge that only ever meets on the EA degree. And, for X number of years before you can join a Fellowcraft Mason's Lodge, which is, only ever meets on the Fellowcraft Mason's degree. And, then be that member of that. And then you can go join a Master's Lodge. And so the Worshipful Master of the Entered Apprentice Lodge would be a Master Mason. All the subordinate officers would be Entered Apprentices. And then you'd have to, and then for the Fellowcraft Mason's Lodge, you would have the Worshipful Master and Senior Warden be Master Masons, and all of the other ones be Fellowcrafts. But that is a wildly different system than we currently use. So,
I did see the post on the Texas Freemasons page, if I can circle back to that and say that although I don't know that I have a real opinion about that, about taking pictures, although, as a lodge, we always try to follow whatever Grand Lodge law is to the best of our interpretation. But I have always cautioned folks on that page to deal with each other in a manner that would reflect that we are members of a fraternity of brothers. Because sometimes, and this one's a great example where it just gets dangerously unmasonic in the comments, and it's disheartening, and to know that it's not a tiled room, and I've said before, sometimes I look at that page and I look over the comments, and man, I don't know if I'd want to be a member of that of that fraternity if that's how they talk to each other.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I was talking with Rhit just before we jumped onto the call, and I was saying, hey, this is really disheartening.
Yeah. I think one of the greatest things was, I don't know, y'all probably remember, and I think y'all discussed on the podcast, the Texas Ricky Cox pose picture.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, and how much butthurt that causes.
So all of those are really cool. I mean, I'm not one to post like that myself, but I don't begrudge those who do. I think anytime you get a positive light on the fraternity is a good thing, and the guys seem to really genuinely kind of enjoy each other's pictures. So I think that's a good thing. The one thing that that I had a problem with was a lot of pictures were being taken in open lodge. You could clearly see the Bible was open. You could clearly tell that it was an open lodge. And I think one of the coolest things was hearing some of the leadership from Ricky himself, because it was kind of started by him, was individually messaging each one that he saw taken in open lodge and just remind them that, hey, although this is cool and you're doing something, like good for the fraternity and in their thoughts or mine, that it's also important not to take pictures in open lodge. And I think that probably that approach is a better showing of leadership than just like, calling people out in a Facebook post on the Texas Freemasons page. It's just a better way to go about things, and did show a true sign of leadership from Ricky himself. So I thought that was good.
Oh, that's that's a pretty fantastic example too, because it was handled very well.
Yeah, it was. It really was.
Yeah, and that is an important part of leadership too, right? Is that you praise in public, but you criticize in private, or maybe not criticize, but you coach in private.
Yeah, all of the challenging posts on there, just like could have been avoided. A lot of that could have been avoided, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it should be a chance for us to really have some decent dialogue. I mean, there's no real inflection. You don't get the body language with it. So it should be kind of just the disbursement of facts. But somehow emotion gets so wrapped up in everything. And it's like, what? Wait, how does it have anything to do with that? Why are you bringing emotion into a discussion about Grand Lodge law?
Exactly.
Let's try to get to the bottom of this. And if there's an actual issue, let's correct it.
Yeah, because if I'm breaking Masonic law, and I would love to be told, I don't want to be embarrassed or chastised in front of everybody. But if I'm doing something wrong, I look for guidance from my brothers, and if that's something that I need guidance on, please give it to me. But I think it could just be delivered in a manner that's a little bit more Masonic than sometimes I see on the Texas Freemasons page. We always say in our, when we're talking in the lodge and we're talking about the Texas Freemasons page, it's like, man, if you ever wanted to argue or be an attorney, that's a good spot to start. Just join the Texas Freemasons page, because you will find yourself in an argument. So
there you go. That's how I look at it. Get some battle scars and get tried and tested. Yeah, and I think that we will work out of this adolescent stage with it, and it eventually, whether Facebook makes it or not, some kind of online equivalent is going to be such a powerful tool as us for Masons to connect. You guys are the perfect example with the after party at Grand Lodge. A huge portion of that success is due to social media.
Absolutely.
It's just a great tool.
It is, and we value being able to connect. To all of our brothers. We, wouldn't have met any of you guys as readily, had we not connected over a social media website. So definitely see the value in it. I just think it's up to the individual user to police themselves in a manner that's befitting the fraternity.
Right. Exactly. And you got to take into consideration, your people are registering how you respond to these posts, because I have a list of names that are just in my head. I'm not even going to read that post. I know it's got some kind of vitriol in it, and it's the whole reason I invited you on the podcast, because I enjoyed reading your rebuttals and posts. I was like, this guy puts a little thought into what he's saying. Let's have him on.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And that's the thing. I want to be able to promote that in that social media aspect, that we can have real dialogue. We can actually solve problems on there, get best practices, let's use it.
Yeah.
We could be social in social media.
Exactly. Yep. So is that all from one question, Gabe?
It was all kind of birthed out of the same question and sub-questions that were asked at the time of the release of this episode about 2 weeks ago. So it's just kind of stuff that was on my mind.
Well, then I won't go into the other one that I got chastised on for being misinformed about Grand Lodge Law.
What
We'll
was
save
that one?
That was about somebody told me you can't tell another Mason what you do for a living and that you would like their business.
Oh, what's the story behind that one? You can't do that?
You can't advertise, like I can't make a business card with a square and compass on it.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't advertise my business that I am a Mason. Hey, I'm a Mason, do business with me because of that. But if I meet you and, for instance, I'm a realtor, Gabe, you say, yeah, I'm getting ready to sell my house, blah, blah, blah. I can say, Brother Gabe, I am a realtor and I would love to help you.
Ah, okay. So it's indirect? Is that how that works?
Well, it is. I mean, what's the difference in that and you asking me what I do for a living? Because you can just as well say, I've got somebody in mind, or I would prefer not to use a brother. I would prefer to use this guy, whatever. But you're having car troubles. A brother's a mechanic. Wouldn't you love for him to come up and say, brother, I'm a mechanic. I'd love to help you. I'll give you a square deal.
Yep.
Absolutely, without question.
Yeah. And, when it comes to a realtor's a bad example because we have a worse reputation than used car salesmen. It's funny. We're like at the bottom of the totem pole when it's looked at as trustworthy professions.
Okay. Used house salesman.
Exactly. And I'm not talking about that mechanic doing anything for free for you. He might offer that, but you shouldn't expect that. You just know you're going to get an honest deal that somebody's going to stand by.
So what's interesting about this is, so in the chapter degrees, there is, as part of the obligation, something that does talk about employing a brother Mason.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we can't go into it on the podcast, but there is something about employing, all qualifications being equal, employing a companion over someone else.
Yeah, Robert Marshall makes that point frequently. That it's in the it is in the York Rite degrees that is in there. And who else would you want, to deal with squarely?
And I know what folks are afraid of because there's a fine line there. We've had the guy that's joined that, worked in kind of a sales position, and he just went from brother to brother. Hey, this is what I do. I would love your bit. This is what I do. You'd love your business. To me, that is illegal. But if I'm in conversation and it just randomly pops up that somebody is having trouble with something I'm a professional at, it behooves me to offer my assistance. And in the same token, he shouldn't expect it for free.
Exactly. Too many people get this idea that the square deal is, hey, somehow let me break my back for you for nothing in return.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I would argue it's not a square deal unless it's beneficial for both parties.
That's the key. That's the key. Right. Yeah. And so when that brother pops up, your lodge is like, we need a website, and that brother pops up and says, I do that for a living. I'll do that for the lodge. You offer to pay him. He's more than likely going to say no, which is what always happens, but you should offer. It's what he does for a living. Get a professional product and reward him for his hard work.
Yeah, so I work in the retail electricity industry, so I'm probably worse than a real estate agent. Some guy that sells electricity. I've actually offered my service to Masons before, and I won't say too much about who or when, but I did get accused of trying to take advantage of the fraternity or my fraternal connections for trying to help someone. And at that point, I was willing to do that for free. I wasn't going to charge any fee for doing it. And it was like, man, it's just hurtful.
No good deed goes unpunished, y'all.
It is hurtful. And that's one of those, Billy, you had a good saying for it, tribal law or tribal understanding.
Tribal knowledge, guy said,
yeah,
tribal knowledge.
One guy says you can't associate your business in Masonry, because nobody wants to come to Lodge being sold. Hey, I open a mechanic shop. Everybody, here's my business card. Y'all bring me your cars. I don't think that's proper. But if it comes up in conversation and the brother needs your help, offer it.
Yeah.
I think I'm in sales. I've been in sales forever, but I think all sales relationships are just those. They start as relationships. I know I've got a car guy and a roofing guy and a plumber I know, and all of that. I would rather all those be Masons, so that I know for sure that he's dealing with me on the square, and then I'm dealing with him on the square as well.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. Any time you interact with another professional for the first time, you start building that relationship. And if he happens to be a Mason, we'll skip that step and let's get right to business. I know I can trust you.
That's exactly right.
It really adds to the value of the whole situation. But it kind of got off the rails a little bit. And I think there were guys abusing it. Hey, does anybody know an attorney? I need some advice. Well, that costs money,
Yeah.
Just because he can get on the phone and tell you how to file the paperwork and all this, he went to school and paid a lot of money to learn how to do that. And typically he gets paid, so he should. But I digress. Yeah. I said I wasn't going to say anything about it.
Oh, you said that. You can't just dangle the carrot like that.
Well, and that was just another one of those intricacies of the Grand Lodge Law, to where it's like, those words that are in there mean things, and you can't just give them another meaning because you think this is what the spirit of the law is.
Yep. All right, brothers. So, do we want to hit the main episode content after our little detour here?
Let's do it.
All right. So, this is one of our Fraternal Spotlight episodes, and for our Fraternal Spotlight, we have Brother David McHam from Waco Lodge 92. Again, David, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you again for having me.
So, David, can you tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the Masonic lens?
Sure. I do live in Waco. I've lived here for 10 years, as we've discussed earlier. Before that, I lived in Red Oak, Texas. My dad was the chief of police there.
Oh, wow.
Up. Yeah.
It's down the road.
Yep. So grew up there. I did live in Houston after I graduated high school. I met my wife in high school. I've known her since she was 11.
Oh,
wow. So we got married just after high school. I tried college. It didn't go well for me the first time around. So tried the workforce for a while, and I bounced around and had a hard time kind of settling in on a career for a while. But we stayed together. We've been married 21 years. I eventually did go back to college and got my undergrad. So that's what brought us to Waco. Is I started working at the Methodist Children's Home. It's a home for troubled youth. And I got my degree in social work and was a social worker there. And then we had a second kid, and then I got a job in the electricity industry because I had to make a little bit more money than social worker. So that's it. And I work in the retail electricity industry. I work from home most of the time. So most of the time you can catch me either at the house or Waco 92, just hanging out.
Sweet.
All right. So can you tell us when you joined Masonry and how old you were?
Yes. Let's see. I need to do some math real quick. That's not my strong suit. So I was 37 when I decided to join, which was a little late. I felt I was disappointed that I'd waited so long. But none of my family members had talked about Masonry.
Yeah.
And it turns out that a ton of my family was in Masonry. And I vaguely remember when I was young, seeing my dad walk in the house with this white thing that he had gotten that night in the ceremony, and it looked like a giant napkin, and it hung in his closet on a coat hanger, one of those ones with like the clothes clips, the clothesline clips. So it hung there forever. But my dad was the chief of police, and did struggle to attend lodge and find the time. And then I think he just kind of got out of the habit of going. And then like no one ever talked to me about Masonry until I was doing competition barbecue here in Waco, and I was competing, and we were at the Karam Shrine. And I just graduated college, and my dad was there with me, and I was talking about finding some kind of civic organization or fraternal organization to get involved with. And he was like, you gotta be a Mason. And I was like, yeah, you never talked about it at all. And he was like, yeah, I know, my bad. But he was like, you really should be a Mason, because when you were a kid, we knew that there was, you had a learning difference, and we didn't know what it was. And because your grandpa was a Mason and I was a Mason, you were able to go to the Scottish Rite Hospital, and they were able to diagnose you with dyslexia. And they were then able to force the school to hire a special education teacher, because at that time there wasn't one on staff.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't anything to do with. So I was struggling in school. So they were able to force the school district to hire a special education officer. So I owe my school career, at least my primary school career, to the Scottish Rite Hospital and their work with me, because I do have dyslexia.
Mhm.
So, and now it's not noticeable. So I am a Mason because of my grandfather was in the Scottish Rite, active member in the Dallas Valley and the Scottish Rite. So.
Well, that is a fantastic story.
When were you raised?
I was. I'm not good at dates. I can't remember the exact date. I know it was February, and I can't remember the date. But
the year is all I was looking for.
Yeah, the year I can't. I've been a Mason now for 5 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Your tenure.
Yeah.
Well, look at you, a meteoric rise to Worshipful Master, one of the oldest lodges in Texas.
Yeah, I don't know if that says more about the lodge tradition.
So, did you join Waco Lodge initially then?
I did.
Okay, so you are 100% 92 through and through.
I am. I only other lodge that I am a member of is Tranquility Lodge, because Waco 92 is its home lodge here on Earth.
Ah, okay. Oh, really?
Oh, cool.
I did not know that.
Sweet.
So can you tell us a little bit about Waco 92?
Yeah, so Robert is the official historian of Waco 92, so I'm not going to do near the justice that he can on its history, but I can tell you it was formed in 1852. It is the oldest ongoing organization in Waco that survives today. We have a book that I often refer to. It's called The Century of Fraternity. That was written by a member of our lodge, and it covers the history from 1852 to 1952. So a lot of my personal knowledge about the history of the lodge comes from that book. And so I know that our first master was Claiborne Varner, and Claiborne Varner was friends with the Goodnight family, who all happened to be Masons. He convinced the Goodnight family to bring the Goodnight Loving Trail through Waco, to which we owe Waco's entire existence, to the fact that trail did come through there, and it produced a community of commerce, and then spawned a actual community. So Waco owns its existence to Masonry, which I think is just fascinating. So we've had several locations, but now we land just a bit outside of the main part of town now, in our final location that was built in 1969.
Oh, yeah, the building you're in now.
That's correct.
That's a cool building, too.
So you said you've been a Mason for 5 years, and obviously you're sitting as Worshipful Master right now. What was kind of your officer progression then?
So I was junior steward, then I was junior deacon. I skipped senior deacon, went to junior warden, senior warden, and now worshipful master.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I guess they didn't like your cooking then.
Get this guy to the east. We can't stand his gumbo.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that was a secret.
That's awesome.
So, David, what is your favorite aspect of Masonry and why?
I think my favorite aspect is this is a shining example of one of my favorite aspects of Masonry is getting to know people, brothers, whom just maybe we haven't even met. I know a lot of people that I have not actually met face to face, but are so kind, offer help, good leadership. People have offered, kind words and birthday wishes online. That community of people that I wouldn't otherwise probably know or be friends with. Um, we had a Masonic event last night or yesterday in town. I think we had the lodge leadership at the Scottish Rite Building this weekend. Mm-hmm. And folks I've never met before, we just met out at a bar for some drinks afterwards, just to meet for the first time. Wouldn't have normally met any of those guys or probably been friends with them had it not been for Masonry, and that's one of my favorite aspects.
That is the good one. So, Dave, what do you see the strengths and weaknesses of Texas Masonry?
I do see the strengths as the one strength that I do know that we have is we have a lot of history. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that I talk to, prospective members, are extremely interested in the history of everything, but specifically, history is what's drawn them to Masonry. And I know that the youngest generation of folks that are coming through right now are looking for a social network that isn't online. They're looking for a real social network that they can be a part of. And I think that's one thing that we've tried to focus on is that social network and making it beneficial for everybody who's a part of it. I think we've talked a lot about at our lodge how to attract the next generation of man, or the next segment of members that are available, and you have to have those conversations. So it's going back to wearing suits in lodge, eating off of china instead of paper plates. It's some of those things that's taken the lodge to the next step that I think the younger generation is looking for. They're not looking to come in and have a picnic with a bunch of guys in jeans and t-shirts. They want to come into something that's just a little bit more than they're required to do. And I think that's what a lot of people are craving. So that's a lot of the strengths that we have in this organization, and specifically 92, is we can harken back to the history and we can show them pictures of this is what brothers look like in the 50s and met in this location, and we can meet that in that exact location today, and we can, we're still doing the same thing that we did then. And I think that's fascinating to some people, and I've seen that it's drawn a lot of people in, and we have that strength as a state and as a body of Texas Freemasons to draw on.
Wow, and that's interesting because I just recently read a paper by a professor. He was not a Mason, but he talked about that very same thing, that Freemasonry was one of the original social networks. And that was how ideas spread, and that he proposed that without Masonry, the Enlightenment that happened in the 1700s and continued into the 1800s wouldn't have happened. And that's really cool, to see your interpretation that people are looking for that connection again, right? Or looking to kind of unplug and go back to traditional networking.
Yeah, I believe it's true.
No, and you hit on something too that really, when you quantify attracting new members, you use the examples of dressing nicer suits and better dinners and presentation there. And that's just, that is kind of the crescendo, or really and truly, it's the starting point of changing that culture in Lodge. Because when you say dressing up, a lot of people just instantly deal their heels in and say it's the internal, not the external. Okay, we get that. Let's move past and understand what we're trying to accomplish here and the tool that dress has for the man. Because, in my profession, if I'm going to meet a very important, intimidating salesman, I dress the part, and it makes me feel better.
Exactly.
I've had an employee that worked for me that told me, said, you know what, I'm going to start wearing a suit again because it just makes me feel better.
I like what you say about it's something that's more effort than they normally are required to put in. I was talking with my fiance's little cousin. He came to stay with us for a little while, and he was talking about Order of the Arrow, which, for anyone that doesn't know, is a sub-organization within the Boy Scouts that is highly influenced by Masonry, because the ritual was written by a Mason. And we got to talking about Masonry, and he was really interested in it because he was asking, well, how do I join, and all these questions. And I said, well, are you going to A&M? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, it's a bit of a drive, but, when you get there, like, make sure, whether you join them or whether you join one of the lodges in College Station, make sure that you end up checking out Gray Lodge, but buy a tuxedo first. And when I mentioned that he should buy a tuxedo or a dark suit, I did say, or a dark suit, he got real interested real quick. He said, really? He says, oh, man, that's so cool. And I see that reaction. That he's not the only young guy that I've talked to that's had that same reaction of, oh, wait, this is something that I do because I enjoy it, but I enjoyed enough that I'm wearing a suit for it, right? There's this sensation of, wait, this is important,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's like putting on the suit as a ritual to say, I'm doing something extraordinary.
Exactly. And it doesn't have anything to do with me judging you by your external. You know what I'm saying? It has everything to do with you and your Masonic journey. If you don't think it works, try it. Go get you a good suit. And my first suit when I first joined was from Walmart, and I wore it all the time. You can get a cheap one. Mm-hmm. Grant even goes and gets them from the secondhand store and has them fitted. So he pays like $40 for some really, really good suits.
The only thing that kills me about your suit wearing, Rhit, is that sometimes I'll turn around and I'll look and you're wearing Doc Martens under the suit.
I only can go so far, man.
I know. David,
those
what
dress shoes are beating.
David, what keeps you motivated to keep working in the quarries?
I think what keeps me motivated is I can see that Masonry as a whole, if we look back, has crescendoed and there have been valleys and peaks and valleys in membership, and we are in a valley right now. And we are, and specifically, I think this is probably true for everybody, but it's specifically true for Waco 92. And it's not derogatory against my own lodge to say that the actions that we take right now will echo in the future. So what we have to do right now is we have to pay very close attention to the things that we are doing in order to improve the fraternity and improve our lodge, to make sure that we're around for the next generation. Because if we take a misstep now, it could be critical in our own present condition. So that's kind of what keeps me motivated. I know that we're at a critical point right now, and I think that's what keeps my attention and focus.
Nice. Yeah, I think you guys being an older lodge may not be as close as some other of these younger But I know, especially here in Tarrant County, there's quite a few that are really, really struggling. And they're at that point that every decision they make is either going to lead to their demise or ultimate success.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
getting closer and closer.
So we've been focusing on a few things to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. And actually, it started with Robert's year and he was Worshipful Master 3 years ago. And so he made a pointed effort to start on a direction, and we've all been moving and marching in that direction. And one of them is just to improve the product. So we have to improve our lodge product. Like, we have a saying, and I know it's widely used throughout the fraternity, that no one became a member to show up and hear the minutes of the previous meeting and pay the bills and go home, right?
Yeah.
So improving the product that we have, and then improving the culture of the lodge. So through that, I'm actually halfway through a really good book called Tribal Leadership. It's leveraging natural groups to build thriving organizations. And I'm using that. I'm going to start using some of the principles within that book to just change the culture within our own lodge of the levels of tribal leadership. So it talks about how to get everybody to buy in on what you're doing, the direction you're going, and then through that, the passion that everybody will have in that, they'll feel a sense of membership, and the passion that they'll have in that, they'll want to propel it on. So it doesn't feel like, as Worshipful Master, you're pushing a giant rope. That you'll have people behind you helping you, pull that rope instead of you pushing that rope yourself. So,
yeah.
And then I think we're just we're trying to find unique and good ways to market the fraternity and our lodge, that as closely as we can while following Grand Lodge law.
No, and I think you guys have done a great job. I mean, because just in the past recent years, I mean, the after party's a great one. Y'all's fundraiser, which I'm about to ask you about, was genius.
Yeah.
And I think
I
could
agree.
really push it out there. So that's my next question I want to ask you about is give us the overview of the Busy Brew.
Yeah, so I will say this is Robert Marshall's complete idea. The only hand I had in it, I think, was I helped craft the name of the product, and I helped with the label design. Otherwise, this is completely Robert Marshall's idea. And so the idea was we were looking for a way to generate revenue outside of the membership. Because you can only ask your brothers for a donation or to buy something so many times to where you tap that revenue stream out. And so eventually you have to start finding something that goes out to the public to where it becomes popular enough for where they're purchasing it as well. And then you don't necessarily have to rely on constantly beating up your membership to buy a product or whatever, even though it's become popular within the membership. And we appreciate everybody that buys it, but we were looking for something that went beyond the walls of Masonry that would provide a good service, provide a good product, but then also open up some questions about the fraternity itself. So hopefully bringing people in with that as well. And so Robert contacted a roaster that's here in town that sources their beans internationally through several sources, and contacted them, and they were very interested in working with us. They had Robert over for a tasting. He tasted several flavor profiles and picked one, and then they made an agreement that if we agreed to buy a certain poundage of coffee from them, that they would not roast that particular blend for anybody else but Waco 92.
Nice.
So we go over and we pick it up by the bulk. We bring it back to the lodge, and we offer it by the bag. Either whole bean or ground. We bought an industrial grinder. Robert went out and procured an industrial grinder so we can grind up, several pounds of coffee really quickly. So we offer it on our website for anybody who's interested to pick up a bag, and just we just it's been really neat for us. It was great to serve it at Grand Lodge. We don't think it was the best way to serve it when we were at Grand Lodge, so we're looking into perhaps maybe coming up with a better way to brew it, because we feel like the brewing method at Grand Lodge kind of took some away from the flavor profile, but we feel like we're just happy about it. We're having a lot of fun doing it.
So, for asking this question, what's the website address?
It's www.wacomasonic.org.
Masonic.org. Gotcha. So you guys are going to try to push this outside the Masonic lens, like try to get it in a grocery store or something like that?
Yeah, what we've tried to do is to get it into some places here locally. Maybe our goal is to get it into, there's a new health food store that's opened up that kind of serves like organic groceries. And I think our product would qualify. So our goal is to like get it into. We've also been offered. I think Robert's checked into a few places that are willing to have tastings of our coffee. We would offer it up and then sell bags of coffee. And then the guys who wrote have a coffee or partnership with a coffee house called Dichotomy Coffee here in Waco. That's a coffee house / bar that also I think we're working really hard with them to get them to serve our coffee, our flavor profile, our particular flavor profile, and then sell the bags in the store to try to get a push outside the Masonic lens.
So when you guys get proceeds back, what are you guys dedicating those funds towards?
So we have an overall budget set aside each year for charitable giving. And that charitable giving is then divided among scholarships and then whatever particular charity we swing our weight in behind that year. So this year, working with the Christian Women Job Corps. So it's an organization here in town that takes ladies from that may have been abused or for whatever reason, they take them off the streets if they're homeless, and they help them pass their GED, give them basic skills, and then find them employment, housing, clothes, kind of get them all set up and make sure that they're thriving in the community. So we're lucky enough to get to work with them this year. So those funds for Busy Brew are funneled into that main account, and that money then is divided up amongst those charitable organizations.
Gotcha. And the reason I ask is because I think it'd be great either way you guys decided. If your building's falling down, that'd be a great, something similar for a lodge out there. That'd be a great fundraiser, a way to raise funds for that building. But if you guys are going all towards charity, I think of like Paul Newman's dressings and things that, I still buy today that sold off the shelf because people knew they were going towards a charitable cause.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have that on your package or not, but that may be something to consider,
Yeah, I think we were kind of vague about it on purpose, just because when it started, we didn't know if it was going to be successful or not. So we didn't know exactly what we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know what we were doing. So that's where the funds have been going, but we tried to stay vague with that just in case the brethren voted otherwise, because it has been a full lodge effort, even though it's Robert's baby. We definitely have thrown the whole weight of the lodge behind it and support it. So we wanted to make sure that the brethren were good with us using those funds for charitable organizations. But yeah, they're funneled into that charity fund.
And I just, once I heard of it that Robert did, I thought, man, think about in the future, if your brothers buy into this, because I'm not a guy that's going to sell your raffle tickets for a gun raffle, but I will help a lot. I'd help my lodge sell the coffee and get it in this store, then this store.
Yeah.
And 10 years down the road, you're selling more than you can really do. And it's a great source of income for your lodge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really, really exciting. Some of the people who've really taken hold of the coffee and really helped us out. I would say Brad Billings has been wonderful about helping promote the coffee. Raul Scully, also another one, who those guys bought a bag for while they were DDGMs, bought a bag for each of the lodges that they were visiting, and so that's just really cool. That kind of support that we got right away was just is really cool, and from that we've gotten guys who've tasted the coffee who do like it and have been repeat orders, and we just appreciate all that. Because it's neat to have watch this idea be birthed by Robert, put to life, and then seeing it grow. It's been really good. It's been really fun.
Absolutely. No.
Yeah.
Lodges should put on their thinking caps like that. I mean, because you're talking about thinking outside the box. That was good going. And to Robert's credit, probably why I like him so much is he's giving you all the credit. He's like, to Dave about the Busy Brew. He was the brains behind it. He's a good guy.
He's a good leader. That's a mark of a good leader, is passing off the credit. And I have to say, the idea, the brainchild behind it, is all him. So I was lucky enough to help in the project, and I'm still lucky enough to be involved. But I will say my idea fell flat on its face, and so I appreciate him. I had an idea I made, and I still have them in here in the house somewhere. I made Masonic soap. I was so pleased about this Masonic soap. I bought. I contracted with somebody, a naturalist, a herbalist, who was making her own soap. And she said, I can come up with some manly smelling blends, and they're all natural. I was like, man, this is a great idea. She bought molds with the square and compass. So the soap comes in square and compass. I was like, everybody's going to love this. And so it completely fell flat on its face. And so we did not sell one single bar of soap. So the idea that I had was a colossal failure.
Just have a whole bunch of unwashed Masons running around everywhere, smelling up the place.
So we even had, I came up with soap on a cable tow. And so we have soap on a cable tow. I just thought was brilliant. Who wasn't going to buy that?
Soap on a cable tow. God, you're killing me.
I know.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It was amazingly awful. It was the worst idea. And it continues to haunt me to this day. So Robert's probably just being kind and letting me have a win here.
Well, and the wonderful thing about it, though, is that with business ideas like that, soap on a cable tow, Masonic, square and compasses shaped, soap bars, the manly smell soaps, if you don't try it, you'll never know. And so sometimes you end up with stuff that just didn't work out because it wasn't a great idea, or maybe it wasn't the right time, right? Because I think I would probably buy Masonic soap that smelled manly. That sounds cool. But the adventure is in the attempt,
Yeah.
And as long as you don't get slammed financially and you come out okay, then hey, nothing ventured, nothing gained, and you got a good story out of it, right?
That's exactly right. Right.
Failure breeds success, and you guys really took the principles of that soap business and put it into coffee. Because I love the story of failure.
I did notice the coffee tastes rather soapy. I'm kind of concerned.
I guess we'll have to work on that. Maybe change gloves more often when we're bagging.
Fantastic coffee.
That it is. Well worth it. No. So, before we get too long-winded, I wanted to ask you about, Robert told me that you were a minister, and I was curious how long you've been a minister.
So, yeah, I will, I know Masonically, we don't talk about politics. So I will say that now I consider myself an ex-evangelical. So I don't identify myself with the evangelical community as closely as I once did. But I did enter the ministry in 2001 and worked at a church there in Red Oak as their youth pastor. And I built a skateboard park in the parking lot. And a 75-member church had 200 kids that would come on youth night. But
wow,
it was it was extremely difficult to sustain, because as one of the deacons pointed out, the kids coming are great, but they don't have any money. And I was like, yeah, you're right, they don't. So so I was in ministry for a while. I was even in ministry here in Waco. When I had moved to Waco, I moved away from a church I was attending in Waxahachie, which is the next street over from, or the next town over from Red Oak.
Mm-hmm.
And the minister there, the pastor there, was like, I just want to encourage you to start your own church in Waco. And when I moved out here, I was like, oh, you don't understand. Like, Waco is sick with churches. Like,
Yeah.
we don't need another church here. They're good on them. So he encouraged me to try to find something else to do, that would be a little different and a little outside the box, which kind of fits me anyway. So at the time, my wife had started a strip club ministry that would minister to the strippers.
Oh, wow.
And so her and a group of ladies would go out on a Friday evening, and they would go from club to club and hand goodie bags and build relationships with girls, so that when they weren't at work, they would reach out to them with particular needs, and could be there for them and provide a network of support that might not be readily available to them any other time.
Yeah.
So through that, we were able to actually hold church on Sundays at one of the local strip clubs here in town.
Wow.
And so we would
Wait a second.
Carry,
in Waco?
Yeah, in Waco.
See, that's how little I know about Waco.
Yeah, that they actually have a strip club.
I would think that would have been barred, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So they used to have 3 at the time that we were doing this. They had 3. Now they're down to 1, and they do get a lot of pressure from Baylor to, Baylor would like to see them all go away. And rightfully so. I mean, you got a large Baptist university. It looks kind of bad to have a strip club down the street. So we held church there at that particular club for about 3 years until we retired.
So when I talked to Robert too, he said you had another sweet spot in Masonry, and that was family. And I was interested to see what your take was on how they fit into the whole Masonic lens.
Yeah, so one of the things that I thought was really cool was when Grandmaster Wiggins was installed. I think there was some pictures up on the PowerPoint, up on the screen, of him taking his daughter to lodge, and I think her picture was taken, and they were in I don't know, when he was in the South at his lodge, or something like that. And I thought, man, that's really cool. And why wouldn't you involve families in your lodge experience? I mean, we take care of family members and widows after the Mason passes, or we would take care of them now. I've had brothers take care of my wife here in town when I was out of town for business, who would stop and change a tire for my wife when she had a blowout on the side of the road. So why wouldn't families be a part of the lodge experience? And I started noticing that, yes, there is an aspect where we want a place for just brothers to hang out, and when brothers dwell together, it is wonderful. And so you do want that aspect, but you also don't want to make it so mysterious and so guarded that we don't bring the families there. So one of the things we started doing is the 3rd Thursday of every month. Our stated meetings on the 2nd Thursday of every month. The 3rd Thursday of every month has been family day. We've been popping popcorn, watching movies, playing games. And I will say it hasn't been well attended yet, but I'm sticking to my guns on this one. I think eventually the guys are going to see that I'm pretty serious about this, and we're not going to give up, and that they're going to start bringing their families out. And eventually, I foresee us putting up maybe a playground at the lodge itself.
Yeah.
So the kids can play outside on the playground, and the parents can watch a good movie inside on the PowerPoint projector. And I look forward to that. I think that's going to be a big thing. I remember reading some book when I was a pastor of T.D. Jakes, and he was like, if you can get a particular person to be a member of an organization, you'll get a certain percentage of people who will want to come. And if you get their spouse to come, that number exponentially grows. But if you can weave the whole family in there where there's something for everybody, then your numbers escalate exponentially. And so I think taking that, you can look back and see why Eastern Star and those who have DMLA and Rainbow chapters, those lodges always seem to be ones that do have something for everybody, and they all seem to be just uh, a lot more community oriented in their lodges, and I've always respected that, and saw that right away, that those lodges have something. They've tapped into something where there's something for everybody in the family, and I think it's important. I think it's something we need to all look at.
No, and go ahead, Billy.
No, I agree 100%. And Rhit, I know you and I had talked a little bit about this, doing something similar in our lodge. So I'm very interested to see the success you have with this as you continue to implement it.
And my thing is that don't judge your success of these meetings on attendance. If you leave that family night meeting and there was one other family and you bonded and you had a great time, that's a success. You know what I mean? It's not based on attendance. I know that when you have something like that, you would love for everybody to come and enjoy. But when we started our Masters Only night, I think we had 4 guys there. And now we usually have about 15 or 16, and it's growing.
That's a really good point. It's a really good point.
Yeah, everything's going to have a curve to it.
Exactly. And, another point that I've really had my aha moment on is that lodges have unique personalities. And, they're in Waco. That is the perfect example of a lodge that needs to have family involved. That's a very family oriented community. It was built on tradition and, the Christian principles, because Baylor had a big influence on that town. And like you said, there's a church every corner almost, and they're well attended. And the family works perfect. And then I think of a lodge like Jewel P. Lightfoot that's full of young professionals in Dallas that live in a loft. Very few have kids. So their focus really isn't going to be on family, because most of them don't even have it yet. They're young men. Right. So you really got to find your identity and where it fits in, to where if you're a lodge that is bustling like ours at 148.2, we have young kids running around everywhere. You need to make sure you make time for that and involve them. Because I can speak from truth. When we started involving the family, things started rolling together with friends of friends joining. Whether it's through Facebook posts of them out at Family Day or Black Tie, whatever, all those dots start getting connected when it's not just the guy posting, it's the wife posting it as well, having a good time because of the fraternity.
I think it's important.
David, what are some funny stories you have about the craft?
Man. I think one of the funniest things that had happened is we had an EA not too long ago, and he came to the particular part of his initiation ceremony where we asked him a pointed question, and there's a particular response that we're looking for, right? And his response in dead silence was, "Well, I could use a pizza right about now." And I think we all we had a lot of trouble regaining our composure to carry on, because we asked the question and he answered it very truthfully. In that moment he wanted a pizza. So that's probably one of the funniest things that had ever happened. Also, we had another guy who had is in his master's degree. And during that degree also, there's another very pointed question open in the second portion of the degree. And another very pointed question, and someone had misled him to the answer.
Oh, that's not right.
Yeah.
And, man.
He just said it with such confidence. And you could see the look in his eye when he the realization that he had been misled, it was so funny. And we tease him about it to this day. We enjoy that. That's good parts of the camaraderie.
Yeah. So I got to ask about your hat. You're not wearing a cowboy hat, huh?
My hat is cool.
Yeah.
My hat is cool. Yeah. So I was sitting at home one day working on my calendar for the year, and I had been messaging back and forth with Robert, kind of checking dates just to make sure that I wasn't, not thinking of a particular date. And he messaged me and shot me this picture of this top hat. And he was like, "Hey, talk me out of buying this hat. This top hat. It's 200 years old, and it's got a square and compass and the guy's initials embroidered in the very top part of the inside of the hat." And
Wow.
I looked at it and I said, and it's 100% beaver. It's a really cool hat. And I looked at it and I said, well, I'm not going to talk you out of it because that's my size, and I know it's not your size. And so if you buy it, I'm the only guy that can wear it. And so then he laughed about it, and we went on talking about something else. And so I was in the lodge one day, and I was hanging out as Robert and I do. I was working, and he was working in our usual vocations, and we're sitting there just chatting about it. And I'm talking about going to the hat maker around the corner and talking to him about making custom hat, because Standard Hat Works is around the corner, and I was going to have him make me a custom hat. And Robert got this like weird look on his face, and he was like, well, maybe I should go with you. And I was like, yeah, man, come with me. That'd be awesome. Like, let's go check it out. And so we got in the car and we drove over there, and they happened to be closed that day. They have like a really weird schedule, but they happened to be closed. So I was like, shoot. So we grabbed some lunch and went back to the lodge, and he said, I don't want you to buy another hat. And he gave me this huge box, and he goes, here. And so I opened it up, and he had bought the hat. And I pulled it out, and I was like, man, it was even more cool in person than I had ever seen it. So I thought it was the coolest thing. But also turns out that a week later, my aunt had sent me a picture of some stuff from my uncle's house, who I wasn't very close to, but unfortunately had passed away. And she had some stuff in there, and she was like, he's got some Mason stuff, but it's not his. It's from his uncle. So it's my great uncle.
Wow. Yeah.
And so they sent it to me, and I will tell you, the man had a top hat on almost exactly like the one that Robert had just bought me.
Wow.
And I was just blown away. And not only that, but like he was a member of Connecticut Rock Lodge number 92. And he was a master. Yes. And so just so cool. Just very cool. So I hired a photographer to copy the picture exactly as it was when I was, my Worshipful Master picture. I had them copy that picture to make mine match his. So I went ahead and put it up on my Facebook page. If anybody's listening and you want to wander by and make fun of me in a top hat, but I made my picture look like my relative's picture, almost 200 or 160 something years ago, was master of his lodge in Connecticut. And I actually contacted the lodge, and they said that when he was master around that time, they only did the work in German. So I don't know, I nerd out about stuff like that. So I thought it was really cool. So I paid a lot of homage to him this year. And one of the things I've done is had my picture modeled after his Worshipful Master picture. And I just think it's really neat.
Dude, that's legit. I'm looking at it right now where you got the tails on that cut. You still see the apron, but they're not tucked behind it,
Yeah. Actually, that's a regular suit coat that I just folded mine open so that you could see the apron. Actually had some guys come by, during our installations. Our officer installations this year was a complete surprise. but we were surprised by having the Grand Master of all of Waco just drop by.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he also brought with him the Grand Senior Warden, and then the Grand Junior Deacon was there, and then oh gosh, there was 4 or 5 Grand Lodge officers in attendance, and someone made mention of the fact that my apron wasn't over the coat, and I got extremely nervous, like, oh man, I didn't even think about it. I was just trying to copy a picture that was out there already. I didn't think about the jacket over the coat, man. I was thinking I'm gonna have to retake this picture. I was kind of bummed about it. And actually, Raul Scully was the one who told me. He was like, you know what? That's not law. That's tradition, but that's not law. It's not law that the apron has to be over the coat. So I was able to keep the picture, and I was very happy about that.
Yeah, even if so, the replication, because it's almost identical aside from your massive beard.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that is so cool, though.
Yeah, thanks.
It's got a story to it. I mean, who wouldn't like that?
Yeah, I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of the history, and I was just so set back by the fact that my relative could have the same lodge number as mine. Just the randomness of that that occurrence just blew me away, and I was just really pleased by it.
Well, it's awesome.
Yeah, very happy. Yeah, and I love the hat. The hat is amazing. It's I took it over to the hat place after I got it and did try to get them to refurbish it a little bit, and they were like, "Hey, that hat is 200 years old. We're not touching it. Like, we're not touching it. Like, they don't make hats like that anymore." And so they gave me a few tips to take care of it. But I love wearing the hat, and I will say that Robert also did something really cool about 4 years ago, right when I may have been a fellow craft even. I was a master. We had a tree trimmed, an oak tree in our yard trimmed, and there were some massive limbs that were taken down. And I had taken a bunch of it because I smoked barbecue, and take it to the house and season it, for a year and then cook with it. And I'd taken a few sections and hid it back one day, and I was like, if I ever become master, I'm gonna have a gavel made. And he snuck with the help of my darling wife, they snuck into my storage facility, snuck that wood out, and had a gavel made out of that wood that was from the yard of the Waco 92. And it is just the coolest thing ever. I mean, this thing is a massive, very sturdy gavel, and I'm really proud of it. I think it's really cool.
That is neat.
Yeah.
All right, Gabe. What do you got? Let's wrap this bad boy up.
Yeah, I believe you have one more question, Rhit.
Oh, I was going to ask him about hold on. Let me pull that up so I don't get the name wrong. The Ding Dong Ditch.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that, because Robert kind of briefly told me. I thought that was funny and creative.
Yeah. So what we started doing when we first started our church is looking for ways to, to help the community. It's what you want to do. And so we started taking Thanksgiving dinner to families, and we started taking them to the house of the families. We would walk in, that we would be invited in. Maybe we would get a name from somebody who's like, you know what, this family's not doing so well this year. Maybe you guys could help them out with dinner. So we pull resources of the people who would be in church, and we go to a particular person's house, and we'd show up, and we bring them, we might bring the kids bicycles and just really make it a really cool thing, and line everybody up and take their pictures with the bicycles and all the food we got. And the folks were genuinely, kind of, sweet, but very shy about taking their pictures. But one thing I noticed is when we did that, the men of the house would always disappear when it's picture time. And so through my social work research, while I was a social worker at the time, I found out that we were taking pictures more for ourselves than we were for them. We weren't really taking pictures for them, and we were kind of objectifying them and their poverty or their need for assistance by taking their picture. And so we weren't lifting them up. They weren't getting an award. They were getting charity, and we were using that charity as to benefit ourselves. And it just felt kind of slimy. And so one of the ways we tried to get around that was we just started laying all the stuff on the front porch. We would work with whoever had nominated them, work with them, lay all the stuff out on the front porch, knock on the door, ring the doorbell. We'd all run and hide to a safe distance and watch them as they look around, look around and find out, like, where did all this stuff come from? And then naturally we would have whoever nominated them maybe follow up with a phone call and let them know, listen, that's not poisoned food. That's it's all really good stuff. You can drink it, enjoy it. It's all safe. It was donated by some community members, and we started getting more joy out of not getting recognition than we ever did when we would try to use that recognition and use that for marketing purposes. We started getting a heck of a lot more fun out of it, and it's just fun if you just go up to somebody's house and watch little kids come out. So we started doing it for Christmas and Christmas presents, and watching little kids come out and see wrapped gifts on a front porch that someone just left there, and they're opening them up right in the front yard, and you're maybe a block away, and you can hear them like really just enjoying these things that they're opening up. It's fun. If you've never done it, you should. I strongly encourage anyone to do it. And so what we started doing is HEB sells packaged Thanksgiving meals that all they have to do is be warmed up. And so we started grabbing those pre-boxed Thanksgiving meals that all you had to do is warm them up. We add a couple of gift cards to them, and then we would add I didn't think they come with a turkey. They came with a ham. So we would add a frozen turkey, and then a couple of 2 liters of sodas, and a couple of sweet and non-sweet tea jugs, and we'd lay it on the front porch and knock and run. And we do it a couple of days before Thanksgiving so they'd have time to actually plan their meal. And it's just really cool. And so we thought we would do that this year with our lodge. We would try that. We were going to try Thanksgiving Ding Dong Ditch and find some families that otherwise might not have Thanksgiving dinner, and provide it for them in that manner, so that we're giving them something, but we're also letting them retain their dignity, because sometimes getting a charitable handout does take a piece of your dignity, and we don't want to do that. We want to uplift people, but we also want to help them out when they're in need.
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting way to earn master's wages. That's cool.
Yeah. It's just Absolutely. It's a fun thing to do. It's fun.
Getting creative again.
Yeah. Hey, that's it. I get really bored inside a box.
There you go. Yeah. That should be all Masons' mentality.
That's a lesson we can all take home.
Yep.
So, brethren, this week's fraternal quote is, "The eyes of Texas are upon you, men of 92. And now on this, your anniversary, we wish to honor you. May your standards be the highest, and God your leader firm and true. Remember, brothers, to be worthy of Waco 92. And that was by Brother Lewis Holtz in a 1950 choral ode to Waco Lodge 92.
That's cool.
I actually had that recited at our installation ceremony this year, just to remind guys that, we used to be a very sought after organization to be a member of, and we need to remember that.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the, to paraphrase Mitch Hedberg, we used to be a prestigious organization. We still are, but we used to be too. So, gentlemen, let's have closing thoughts from Rhit, from Billy, from myself, and then we'll move to David.
Yeah, I just knew I was going to enjoy a conversation with you, Dave. I didn't know what I was going to pull out of this, but I think really the highlight of all of this conversation to me that brothers should take away is get outside the box, get creative with your lodge. If you're doing the same old thing that every other lodge is doing, doing a raffle ticket, it's gonna cause burnout. Do something new and exciting. That's what we should do as Masons, is critical think about how to solve a problem in creative ways. And I commend you guys for doing that.
Thank you.
So Dave,
Billy?
thank you for Dave, thank you for coming on and talking with us. I think you have a lot of great ideas. Waco has a long history. I think it's going to continue, especially with the innovation, that you guys are leading. I always look forward to going down and seeing you guys. It's always a lot of fun. So I look forward to seeing, what happens, what comes out of Waco Lodge in the next couple of years. Uh, you know, I think it's a lot of great information, a lot of great ideas, and I wish you success in your year.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you, all you guys, for having me on.
Yeah, and David, I'd just like to say that I always love talking to y'all because all the guys from Waco 92, and your lodge is a powerhouse of generating creativity and energy and excitement and just good motivation for the craft in general. And I was really interested to hear in kind of the ways that, we didn't really, I guess, explicitly talk about how, necessarily your experience with ministry ties into your masonry, but you can kind of see where all of those leadership skills really do tie in with your leadership skill set, masonically speaking, right? Because there's always a little bit of crossover there. This last anecdote you told about the ding dong ditch method of giving was particularly moving. So I'm really glad that I got to hear that story. But David, if there's any thoughts that you'd like to leave with the listeners, go for it.
Yeah, I will always say, if you're ever in Waco, if you're ever planning on being in Waco, if you will reach out, we love having brothers come down and see us, talk to us. If you want to visit, if you're going to be in town for any length of time, or if you're just stopping by for lunch, let us know, and we'd love to meet you. Anybody in the state, we love expanding our the folks that we get to meet and the folks that we get to know, and we'd love to have any of you guys. And if you would like to have any of us visit your lodge, reach out. Our Both Robert and I do a lot of travel, and we cover most of the state, and we find ourselves often real close, and we try very hard to go and see as many lodges as we can, and we'd love to see you guys and get to know the listeners of this podcast, because we often feel, and I know Robert and I sit around and listen to this podcast often. These are the guys who care enough about the craft to listen to and to create a podcast that talks about the many and various things that we're all doing and experiencing within the craft to make it a better fraternity for everybody. And we just appreciate the podcast, and we appreciate all the listeners. And thanks for having me on. As I told Rhit, I feel vastly underqualified, but honored nonetheless. So,
Well, I certainly enjoyed it. It's a good one.
thank you.
Brethren, if you'd like to learn more about us, you can visit us at www.fortworth148.org. You can find us at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook. Our email is info148@fortworth148.org. If you live in the 64th District of the Grand Lodge of Texas and you want to promote an event, please reach out to them at 64th.org. That's 64th.org. We are hosting an educational event in September, on September 15th. It's called Texas Masonicon, and we're going to have speakers from all around the country come in and talk. That you can find our website at www.texasmasonicon.com. We spell that texasmasonicon.com. You can find us at Texas Masonicon on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The event itself is on September 15th, and the tickets are $55. We encourage you to buy tickets a little bit in advance before the event so that we kind of know how much we're catering for. We greatly appreciate that. So, David, do you have a contact info for Waco 92 that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Absolutely. You can feel free to contact me anytime through Facebook is the best place to contact me from there. If you want to have a personal conversation with me, I'm always excited about that. So definitely reach out to me through Facebook on private messenger and we can exchange numbers. If you want to contact the lodge, good place to start is www.wacomasonic.org.
Go there and get your coffee too.
Fantastic.
Get your brew on.
That's it. Get your brew on. Get your busy brew on.
All right. Well, this is Rhit Moore signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.
This is Gabriel Jagush signing off.
And this is Dave McHam. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Woo! Boys, this was a good one.
Yep.